welcome the Minister here. And secondly, can I thank Senator Cassells for his very generous encomium, which I don't think is entirely deserved. And thirdly, can I reiterate my thanks to him and to Senator Warfield and to Senator Higgins for their enthusiastic and totally committed support of the Senate Implementation Group process. I just want to say that one thing that we should bear in mind, if we're talking about between 800,000 and 1 million people, and as Senator Byrne said, it's an increasing proportion of the population all the time, electing six seats in this Senate. You're actually talking about a situation where 70% of the elected seats and nearly 7/8 of the seats in the Seanad completely will be elected by 1,200 people. And the whole purpose of the Manning process was to end that totally anomalous situation. I fully accept the proposition that we cannot discriminate now, and there's no reason to discriminate between the various universities and institutions of higher education, technical universities and the like, and the university that I represent, the National University of Ireland. And from that point of view, the principle of this bill is something which I wholly support. But may I say, in addition to that, that although you've ruled, Chairman, that the other bill, which is in fact published and is available to be moved in this House, is not under consideration today. This is very much like Banquo's vote, because we are dealing here with a proposal that would enfranchise between 800,000 and 1 million citizens over time, and at the same time, which would leave between 2 and 3 million citizens disenfranchised and with no direct say in the composition of this House. And that's something that we have to bear in mind. Can I also say this, that Senator Fergal Quinn, the late Senator Fergal Quinn, various people claim to have saved this chamber, but Senator Fergal Quinn, above all others, did so, and I want to pay tribute to his memory. I remember standing in Shop Street in Galway and in various other places, Athlone and the like, with him, and people flocking to him, wondering why he was in their street, and he was handing out leaflets to people who had no vote in Seanad elections, saying, please save the Seanad. And it was his triumph, above all, that this House was saved. And his posthumous last article pointed out a few things which I think sometimes should bear repetition here today. You know, the present programme for government doesn't mention the reform of Seanad Éireann, even though the Green Party, in fairness to them, attempted to insert it into their programme for government. The second thing is that we have to go back to the attempt to abolish this House, to remember that when those of us who were opposed to the abolition of the House said it should be reformed, as an effort to trample down their idealism, leading members of Fine Gael, including the then Taoiseach Enda Kenny, said there would be no reform. If you voted to keep the Seanad, you'd be voting for an unreformed Seanad in order to scupper that argument. And it was only after that he got his wallop that he finally, about a year later, began to talk about reforming the Seanad and establishing the Manning report, which Senator Higgins has referred to. And the Manning report was established and came forward with workable proposals within the Constitution for the reform of this body and the way it was elected. And its report was given to government. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was ignored. And legislation was proposed by Senator Higgins and myself and others, Seanad reform legislation, as soon as we could in 2016. And in the 2016 election, let's remember, it was necessary to recruit independents to support that government, one of whom was our former colleague, Catherine Zappone. And she insisted on it being in the programme for government of the 2016 government that there would be implementation of the Manning report. And she was given that commitment, and it was scandalously reneged on by cynical people. Nothing happened under Taoiseach Enda Kenny. And when he was succeeded by the present Taoiseach, the then Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, what actually happened at that stage was that after a lot of humming and hawing and a lot of procrastination, the Senate Reform Implementation Group, of which I was privileged to chair, was established. And it had a set of terms of reference that envisaged that the Manning Report would be implemented. It was decided upon by that cabinet in its entirety. We worked from June to December 2018. I should just say, for some people's guidance here today, in case you've forgotten it, because you probably never heard it, that at our first meeting, some members who were totally opposed to the idea of reform proposed that we should visit New Zealand, a country which had abolished its Senate, and proposed at the same time that we should extend our time frame to accommodate such foreign travel. I just want to remember those things. And when we presented the report, and Senator Warfield has referred kindly to my covering letter to the then Taoiseach, saying, you know, this chamber is not going to, is not the place to propose reform. It must come from the Dáil if it's to have any chance. Nothing happened, and I eventually sought a meeting with the present Taoiseach, then Taoiseach. I just want you to know what happened at it. I came to his office and said, what is happening to our report? Because you've made some very cool remarks about it in offhand remarks in Dáil Éireann. And what did he say? He said he had no interest in implementing our report. None whatever. And he said that if some private members of Dáil Éireann wished to move that report, that was their business, but there'd be a free vote on it, and he assured me it would not command majority support. So the members of this House, including Senator Cassells and others, had slaved to produce this report. We had, at the taxpayers' expense, an expert draftsman draw up the legislation that was there. We, and this must be emphasised, we had provided that it could be implemented in stages, the reform. That it wasn't all going to be big bang. And I had assured members of this House that they weren't turkeys voting for an early Christmas. They would have at least one more election, most of them, under the old regime. But that wasn't good enough for them. The cynicism was absolutely there. And when the 2020 general election took place, all mention of Seanad reform evaporated from the political discourse. Now that is shameful. It's really shameful. And the people involved, two successive Taoiseach, Enda Kenny and the present Taoiseach, bear the personal blame for that. And in fairness to the present Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, he did encourage Senator Cassells to participate in the hope that there would be Seanad reform. But unfortunately, it has evaporated completely in the meantime. Now, I just want to say this. The implementation group's report, which is more elaborate than Senator Byrne's bill, was designed to give effect to the will of the Irish people. And I am 100% behind the idea that no third-level institution, be it a university or an institute of higher education, should be left out of the process or discriminated against. But I don't see why the farmer's wife, or the farmer for that matter, or the bricklayer, or the construction worker, or the taxi driver, or all of those people who are citizens of an equal republic, stand with no votes in our present system. And whereas I commend the senators for giving life and resurrecting the prospect of equity as between universities, as envisaged by the 1979 referendum, which, by the way, was not envisaged to widen the franchise, but merely to facilitate the dismemberment of NUI, which was then in contemplation. Whereas I commend this effort, I have to say, and will support this bill because it's the principle of the bill that we're debating now. This is not enough. It is simply not enough. It is utterly inadequate. And I want to make one final point about democracy. If, you know, if there are between 800,000 and 1 million voters for 6 seats in this House, the quota for election will be 1/7 of that, which is well over 100,000 votes. So to become a university senator or a higher education senator will require 5 to 10 times what, in terms of number one votes, what it requires to get into Dáil Éireann. And I just want to make one point, and it's not vainglorious at all. I asked a researcher in my independent group, a Catholic, to quantify how many TDs got less first preference votes than I did in this chamber. And it was over 102 got less, and Senator Mullen, in fact, got even more votes. But I'm making the point that if we are going down the road of saying that it takes 100,000 people to put in one university senator, and people in Dáil Éireann are in there in some constituencies in Dublin, and some people have very high office with 3,000 or 4,000 votes, that's not democratic. And the time has come to consider every citizen in this country as having an entitlement to participate in the upper house in their democracy. The time has come to dismantle elitism. I welcome this bill insofar as it's a small step in that process. But the fundamental question is that this House needs to be radically reformed. All the promises have been made. They have been shamefully traduced by cynical people who asked members of this House and Dáil Éireann, when Senator Cassells was a TD, to participate in a process which they cynically threw into the bin and congratulated themselves for having delayed the process for another couple of years. That is shameful, Catholic. Really, really shameful. And whereas tonight I should be positive about the Senator's bill, I have to say that it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth that to acknowledge that forces which have no commitment to reform of this House constantly succeed by pretending to be concerned with the issue and doing nothing about it. Thank you, Catholic.
I believe the